The city needs to balance the budget. Nobody believes differently. But unfortunately, none of us, and I'm chair of Keep Emmett Safe, live our lives on single agendas. My partner and I manage over 300,000 square feet of office and retail and medical. We have no vacancies that have been vacant for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, or 8 years. But the biggest problem we had was crime and safety. Kemet's reputation for crime exceeds what it deserves, and we all know that. You go to LA, you go to ICSC, you meet with people. I've been in that industry 4 decades, and what do we hear? So we all worked our tails off, including a lot of you, most of you all supported it. Said, wait a minute, we're going to go single agenda. If it's not safe and clean, we're not going to retain business, we're not going to grow business. We can see a difference in the last year. Everybody has. But you don't go a week in Hemet without car chases, people with loaded guns every day that are on probation. Hemet didn't create the failure of the penal system in California. That system hasn't been fixed. We can't keep people in county jail. We can't get them to state prison. So, unfortunately, for good or bad, public safety is ruling the day. But that's no reason to turn other departments against public safety, however unintended. But that's the message that comes out today. Measure U caused the problem. No, Measure U was a desperate attempt to stabilize the crime. When we passed Measure U, you had 2,500 plus violent gang members in the valley. The county had scrapped their gang task force. Your fire department had been depleted and destroyed by a previous council that wanted to give the contract to CAL FIRE. Your police department had been demoralized, taken from 88 to 57. You all know, probably better than me, every police and fire department in California is out there recruiting and desperately hiring. We've had calls from rank and file firemen and policemen for a week and a half about zero raise. So, unfortunately, I think if you're going to, in the 3 to 5 year range, reestablish reputation that Hemet is a little town that did, and is now safe and safer with a great reputation, that will affect business. And Mayor, I'm sorry, all the housing expansion last time left us gutted when the commuters walked away. And it's well known that rooftops of families are a net negative cost to cities for services. So if we're serious about growing revenue, we've got to have a great reputation for being safe and clean. Then we can have a place where people want to be. I recruit doctors in this town. My partner and I in our real estate business constantly recruit businesses. Nobody's brought more businesses here and jobs than our firm has. Okay, your city manager, Alan knows, has had a standing offer from me for over 4 months to volunteer, sign non-disclosure, and work for free when you can bring employers or retailers and you need any help. You've had an offer for over 4 months to volunteer people like Todd Fouts, Kevin Fahrenkoff, and Eric Gosh to look at budget, look at suggestions. So it's not that the business community doesn't want to step up and help. And Deanna and her department and Public Works, they're great. They bend over backwards to work with us. But this isn't them against public safety. But if we want Hemet to be great again, we better not slow down in any way, because this community voted to make that their #1 priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Piper. And he'll be followed by Lori Meadows.
Good afternoon, Rich Piper. I live in Hemet West. I have a few items that I'd like to chat about. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's involved in these processes for the work and the passion that they put into it. I realize it's not easy. I'm not a financier. I'm not a business owner. I was going to say, you know, I can imagine what you're going through. I can't imagine what you're going through. It doesn't even register. I just know that our community needs to be safe. It needs to be clean in order to attract quality businesses and residents to our area. When we went out, Measure U, Howard and Kevin and Rob and Eric and Bruce and a lot of their friends were the money and the brains behind this whole thing. I was the support, so I don't take any credit for what happened. I was just supporting them. As far as what we promised, it wasn't a promise. We were trying to explain what Measure U would accomplish over a 10-year period. It was just that simple. Chief Brown and now Chief Webb had a plan. They put the plan out there. They had 5 years that they were going to increase police and fire services, equipment, and different things like that, and it was going to be continued over the next 5 years. The key was they were planning on a $10 million nut, if I'm not mistaken. That was the number that we had as an estimate. So their plans were based on $10 million a year. It seems like it's going to be a little bit more, but their plan was $10 million a year. If you start taking money out of that $10 million, then the plan kind of falls apart. It's like anything else in your home budget. If you're planning on that you want to save to buy a house, in 1 year you don't put away the money that you said you were going to put away, your plan kind of falls apart or is delayed another year or whatever it is. We can't afford that. The whole premise was that we were going to take police from the present 68 to a max or a number of 108. They were going to bring 40 policemen on board, along with all their equipment and all the things that go along with it. I think it was 16, if I'm not mistaken, Chief Brown, 16 firefighters and equipment and things like that. The whole premise to get to those numbers was $10 million a year. That's what it was going to take to get there. So if you start taking away from the 10 million, those plans fall apart. I don't know how they manage it if they don't have that 10 million. And of course, there's always that possibility it could not produce 10 million for that year. That's why they need what they have right now is the excess for this year, last year, this year, and then next year is for the future years. Because they know there's going to be the need for it. The whole plan was built on that. It wasn't pie in the sky and just pulled out of the air. These guys worked really, really hard at doing that. The key was they wanted, and we agreed, and the city fathers at that point agreed, 1.2 officers per 1,000. That was kind of the nut. That was kind of the average or what everybody aspired to around the cities and the states. At 1.2 is a good police force. That's what we wanted to do. It was for, the whole premise was new police and firemen. You guys were already taking care of the existing 68. You were already at 72%, 74%. Y'all agreed in premise to hold to that. That would be taking care of the regular police. I don't see that we created a split between them and us, or how was it, their officers and our officers. I don't see that at all. The Measure U money was to bring more officers on board, so the officers that were on board weren't working 16-hour shifts, weren't working 7 days or 8 days in a row, and that's unsafe in my book. So it wasn't a promise, it was a plan. That's what the plan was. we need to protect that $10 million. I'm kind of ambivalent, and I'm probably going to not make brownie points with the other six Measure U people and some friends of mine. By the way, we don't talk on Measure U, the committee. I have not had one solid discussion with anybody on the nuts and bolts of what we're doing on Measure U. Every single one of us are bringing our own views, our own feelings, our own emotions to the table on this. And if you can't see my emotion, then you're not looking at the right guy. You're looking somewhere else. 'Cause this is very important to me, that we protect what we said we were going to do. I want to say also that the police and the fire worked alongside of us. They worked with us, so they understood that the Measure U money was new money coming for new officers and new firemen. I don't see that should be a problem, because that's what the intent was, and everybody was on board with that. And I'm starting to get dry mouth, and that happens when I'm nervous and I'm really passionate about it. But I generally don't run for public offices like this. I was asked to do it, and I thought long and hard. I'm putting myself out there, like you do, and I appreciate all that you guys do. I know it can't be easy, and I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just stating what I see is the facts of the matter, why we did what we did, why we're adamant about what we're doing now, why we're adamant about holding true to what we said to the community. I think, I hope this can be adjudicated, if you will, in a manner that we don't name names and pick on people. This isn't a personal thing. This is just what's best for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lori will be followed by Sue Savage.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd like to emphatically recommend that you go with the B recommendation. For all the reasons that have been stated, I think it's very important that we keep that in that pot. And if you had to get at a mid-year budget and there was a crisis, I'm sure that could be talked about. I want to talk about a few details, though, that I'd like to get some clarification, and you can tell me later, you can get back to me, or if you wanted to answer here in the meeting, that'd be fine. I was concerned about the fact that the property taxes, and by the way, I only got to see the budget today. I would suggest that you put the preliminary budget up under finance, because I dug and dug and dug and finally had to find it through asking Linda, where in the heck can I get it? The $5,515,000 stays static. We all know a few things, and I'd like to know the reason why. Why is property taxes staying static? Why are they staying static when we have some major increases in property taxes? And we all know that those have been going up. And I forget, Lorraine, how far back we receive them. I know property taxes are usually received in arrears, so there's a delay, so I'm not sure how far that is. So I'd like to know why that is. Also, the sales taxes went down. Do we have an answer to a reason for that? Eric, are you not on your job selling cars like you should be? What's the deal with the lowering of the sales tax income? The other thing I noticed, and I had talked about this last year when you passed a budget and asked you to reconsider a thought, was that the transient occupancy tax went up by $150,000 in your projections. I love that. I'm glad to see that you're confident in that. Just want to remind you that that hotel out at Saboba is going to open, and it may squeeze in on your TOT tax, but I'm hoping it doesn't. But each year prior to that, and even one that went down a little bit, I think it was an adjustment, there was about a $20,000 to $50,000 increase in the TOT tax, and this year you've got a $150,000 increase. Again, I'm glad to see it. I'd like to know why. And then as a caveat to that, I would like to add, please reconsider some type of tourism promotion budget. The Adventure Hemet, the other things. Again, I've been going down to Palm Springs since November. I'm not going to go for the summer. But the ability to draw from that, I think, would be greatly enhanced if you had some type of funding. It doesn't have to be huge for that. My other question is, if we didn't have an increase in sales tax, so therefore the increase to the police and fire did not occur because you were tied to that. I thought I heard that the increases were because of the increase in payroll. So please, if I could get that explained, and again, you can get back to me. And then one last thing is, what kind of input did the police and fire chief have in trying to resolve this budget deficit? What kind of input did they have into the budget? Thank you.
There's certainly been a lot of discussion tonight regarding an increase in revenue. I believe every single one on the City Council has talked about an increase in revenue and how badly we need it. I believe we've heard from the Measure U people, Hemet needs to have an increase in revenue. As you all know, I have proposed and have demonstrated to this City Council $402,000 worth of revenue increase without a single budget cut, without a single cut to anything, anywhere. What is depressing to me, Mr. Mayor, is I stand up here week after week, month after month, with not a single face saying, we get it. Week after week, month after month, nothing is done. That's what depresses me. So, today, the CEO and president of Bank of Hemet, because that's been the big thing we've talked about, he reached out to me, and he held a meeting with us. It was 2 hours ago, but now it's 4 hours ago. He stated he would be happy to meet with anyone on the City Council and or Hemet City Treasurer to talk about better ways to invest the Bank of Hemet CD. Therefore, I ask the City Council to direct the City Treasurer or themselves to schedule a meeting with the Bank of Hemet CEO regarding the Bank of Hemet CD. I request that the meeting would include the Savages. And please, please consider $402,000 worth of revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorena, do you want to comment on any of the questions that were raised or any of the comments that were made? Or Alan?
Not sure that I captured all of the questions, but why the decrease in sales tax? We base that on history, although HDL is projecting 1.2% increase in sales tax. What we have seen from 15-16 to 16-17 is a slight decrease. So we did have a drop in sales tax. Property tax, again, is based on what we've seen in projections. Not all of the lines in property taxes stayed static. Some of them were increased. I did increase some of them based on what I've seen coming in. And on TOT, the reason I increased it by 150 is because of what we've collected year to date. I think we talked about it about 2 quarters ago when I did the quarterly update that we had projected a lot lower, and we were already something like close to 850,000 for the year, which is a lot higher than we had expected. And so based on that, I increased it. One of the things that I would like to clarify on the investments is that we have to remember that any interest earnings that come in are not 100% general fund. So if we collect $400,000 you mentioned, or $102,000 on the CD or anything like that, the fund balance that's in the general fund is less than 14% of the complete investment portfolio. That means that the general fund is only going to get 14% of that 102,000, of the 400,000, or any of the other amounts that are out there, and we have to keep that in mind. To all of the other funds that have fund balance. So that $65 million is all of the funds' fund balances, all the DIF funds, the water fund, the sewer fund, everybody's. So when we allocate them out, we allocate out based on average cash balance for the year. If the general fund only has 14% of the pie, they get 14% of the interest earnings. If the water fund has, 50%, I don't think it's that high, but whoever has whatever portion, that's the portion that they get of the interest, and it's always important to keep that in mind. If you'd like to refresh my memory on any of the other questions, I don't think I have all of them written down.
If anybody has specific questions afterwards for Lorena, you can address her afterwards. Thank you. Carly, you had a comment you wanted to make? No? Okay. Any other comments from up here? Seeing none, I guess this is a work study, so you're looking for direction on which budget to... Yeah. Deanna, if you could.
Update us on what we've done in the process.
In terms of residential development?
Or any development?
Everything? Just what you were mentioning a minute ago. I just want to make a comment in terms of, as I'm sure many of the members on the council and in the audience know, is that the city can't control market dynamics. And so a lot of what has depressed our residential housing market has been waiting for property values to get to the point to where opening up new tracts is now profitable. We took a huge dip, as everybody knows, in the recession. It's taken us much longer to recover than those communities that are adjacent to freeways, but it has been making its eastward migration again. So as of right now, RSI Lion Homes is in the process of their construction of 178 units. The model opening will be in July, and they're also interested in continuing with all their phases. They anticipate pretty good sales in that. We met earlier this week with another very well-known, very well-respected builder that's interested in 400 units south of Mustang Avenue. And what they shared with us is they would look at probably starting construction second quarter of next year. There's infrastructure plans that need to be done. There's architectural review. So there's just a process that happens. We're meeting tomorrow on McSweeney Farms. They have had a lot of interest from some very good builders for senior development as well as all-age development. They've been constrained or delayed, let's say, by clearing up some and finalizing mitigation agreements with the school district, which has now been completed, and meeting to work with the state actually on a community facilities district to fund Cactus Valley Wash and get that completed. But we're looking at some activity there. Stony Mountain Ranch got their tentative map for the remaining 92 homes in that development extended last night. They're looking and moving forward with that. They're securing their funding. A lot of their slowdown was in terms of waiting again for the market to rebound enough to where it made financial sense for them. We've been contacted, 2 hotel operators interested in coming to town. We did have a very actually good response, I think. We felt at ICSC with a lot of interest in Hemet. We gave them quite a bit of information to contact us. The Pepper Tree senior community, they have risen from the ashes again of the recession and are coming back with 5 senior residential products that they would, slowly bring onto the market as that pursues. We have a number of, actually in terms of our, someone made the comment, I think, in terms of our building permit funds that were somewhat static. And since I provide those numbers, let me explain why it's static. We really thought a lot of this was going to come last year, and it didn't. The tracks just didn't hit. They're just now kind of coming online. So we really do see an increase that you will experience, or we will experience for next year in terms of property building permit revenue. However, we make these projections in January and February, and I'm very conservative when it comes to revenue projections, so I can't make a builder come in and pull their permit. So that's why we kind of stabilized. But having said that, and even having anticipated last year having more development activity, we're only about 100,000 off, maybe a little less than that, and that's because of a lot of reinvestment back in this community, which I do think is a function of the benefits of Measure U and the benefits of all that's happening good in the community, because people do see a value in reinvesting back into their properties, both residential and commercial. We also have commercial activity that's happening. We have 2 new Starbucks, Chase Bank, there's various, drive-through restaurants and things like that. It's not a Costco, it's not a Nordstrom's, but a lot of this reinvestment adds up. And so the other part of that story is, on the front end, you've got the building permit fees and planter fees and those kinds of things adding to but those are one-time revenue. But it's going to take a few cycles to get before those property tax increases hit the tax rolls and that you see it as revenue. So it's a process, but all indications, at least in our department, are that people are interested in Hemet, and we're getting a lot of activity in that. We think that that's positive, but it's not immediate. It takes time. Which one is that?
Chrysler.
It's the Chrysler store.
Oh, yes. The new Chrysler dealership out on Warren Road. Groundbreaking tomorrow. And then also next to the Winco, you may have seen it, the Circle K is open and functioning, and the great sales so far. All of our openings are always do very well in Hemet. So we're very excited about that.
Thanks, Deanna. Yeah. So you need some direction. Okay. So he's looking for some direction.
Okay, like Russ said, I'm just going to say it since he's being quiet, but if you put these together, and I know, just another one, but 3rd time's a charm, right? You pull out the things that are best. I mean, I don't know that we want training to be cut out, but there's, you're going to have to go through and maybe combine these two and get the best of both worlds. I mean, we've kind of all been clear from the beginning that it's going to hurt everybody, and it's not going to feel good, but prioritize with your department heads and see what you guys can come up with. That's my 2 cents.
There's a 3rd sense. I think that's a great idea. And I want to thank the city manager and staff for coming up with another alternative for us to consider. I know it took a lot of time, and you guys don't have a lot of time, understandably. So I do appreciate that you took the time to do that. I think it certainly makes me feel better, and perhaps a couple others, but again, thank you for your work.
And I will add to that, I think we have, as employees in the city of Hemet, some of the best, the strongest, and most talented and loyal people that work in any city in California. And Alan, thank you again, and Chris, for the time, and Morena, time you have put in with me this last week. Going through here, I find I have some more questions that I will talk to you about later, and there's quite a few on Public Works. So Chris is the other Chris, female Chris isn't going to be off the hook on answering some of these questions. But I think what we've done so far is a Herculean effort to find ways of cutting expenses, looking at options, but also very realistically looking at revenue streams and engaging the public, engaging the business community in areas where they can help. And a couple of these, and it comes on the public works side, that there are, again, several more service organizations in the city and in the valley that are stepping forward and saying, you know, do you think we can help the city by doing this? Do you think we can volunteer our services by doing this? So those things, and I understand legal liability and all of that, but I think engaging the community more fully in what we do as a city, as Carly has done with the HOT program, what Gatekeepers has done by forming their company and being out there, I think I've said it every year for the last 20 years, if you want things to change, you all have to stand up and help, because the city as itself, 5 council members, city staff, cannot change a community, but the people living in the city, in the valley, they can change the community. So it's a community effort. And I thank all of you for what you do. You all put in time. You all have, most all of you out there are gainfully employed, have your own businesses, and you still are concerned about the city because you live here. This is your community. So I would say thank you to everyone. And Alan, thank you for putting in this work on this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wish I could take all this credit and go to my head, but the reality is, between me and Chris and Lorena, it was really a collective effort, and then Lorena actually did the majority of the, putting the document together. So it's really a shared kind of thing.
Can I ask Carly a question?
Was this Measure C budget to include anything out of Measure U?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should just look at everything, and it needs to, because everybody's going to feel the hurt on this. That's what I would think. Because it's going to be impossible for us to do it without any.
Well, I think, first of all, I'd like to echo the words of appreciation for everybody's participation and efforts and work. And I appreciate the comments from the public that took the time to come here and listen to the discussion and offer their perspective and input, because it's really helpful, because it doesn't matter so much what I personally think and what I would personally like to see. I'm a representative of you folks, and I guess Linda and I are the last remaining at-large council members, so we really do have a broader contingency of people that we represent. So I try to keep that in mind when I sit up here and deliberate any issue that comes before us, and try to make up my mind of what I believe is in the best interest of the largest number of people. And it may not always match up with how I personally feel. And so it's helpful for me to hear comments from people who were out there beating the bushes and campaigning hard, making the personal, financial, and time commitments to see Measure U fulfilled, and that are also serving on the committee to help review the expenditures. Their input means a lot to me, and their passion is my passion, but it's not my direct charge. That's their committee, and it was their work effort that made it happen. And so I have to give a certain level of credence to their perspective and their input. I appreciate the fact that we have two options, and we might be looking at creating a hybrid third option, if that's possible. But I do know that the budget is a roadmap, and it's not carved in stone, and it is something that can be adjusted as circumstances change, new information comes to light, something happens that maybe wasn't on anybody's radar screen but suddenly pops up. So I think that there's always the option to make budget adjustments, and so that remains a possibility to us. I also recognize, and to Rich's point, the $10 million was a conservative estimate that was born out of consultants' input, and it's not a magic number, and so you can't necessarily say that anything that comes in over $10 million is icing on the cake and we can spend it however we see fit as long as it's public safety. Because I think we need to be mindful of the fact that it is an estimate, and it might be something lower next year or the following year, and we need to protect those funds because our police and fire departments are doing what their commitment was to that endeavor, and that's building their departments back up, and we're seeing evidence of that, hearing evidence of that too, with the sirens right outside. But I've commented to many people that 2 years ago I could drive from one end of this town to the other and back again and never see a black and white. I can't do that now. Oh, I always drive the speed limit. Come on. The fact is that it is making a difference, and it takes time. As I mentioned in the last council meeting, you can lose an employee in 2 weeks, and it can take 2 years to fill behind that vacancy. And not to mention all of the institutional knowledge that goes out the door when they leave. So I'm mindful of protecting the investment that we have in our employees and showing our appreciation to keep good qualified employees here in all departments. Obviously the focus right now with Measure U is on public safety, but that was born out of community input through surveys that were done, and that was the overwhelming priority. And I think once that's assured, the other things become possible. So at this point, I said I could go with either one. I guess I could still go with either option, but I recognize that option B doesn't impact the Measure U funds directly. I'm not a big fan of leaving vacant positions open, and I would urge that if the revenue picture changes, that we look diligently at addressing those with direct input from the department heads on where they think those positions need to be filled first. They're the ones that are in the trenches doing the job. They're the ones that are going to know what they can get by with and what they can't. So I guess that's more than 2 cents worth, but that's all I have right now.
So I like the fact that we have balanced budget options, but I think there should be some more work done on it to make it less hurtful citywide. I do want to reiterate what Councilmember Krupa said, is that we are not the city of Hemet. We are just 5 members of the city of Hemet. The employees of the city are not the city of Hemet. All of us collectively that live and work here are Hemet. Together we all make Hemet, and including the people that go on social media and talk bad about Hemet, they're Hemet too. So, this morning, just a real quick story, side note, this morning Rob Johnson was talking about a post on social media where somebody complained about somebody dumping a stuffed bear out in the field, and took a picture of it, and there was 600 comments and half of them were negative. And all over a stuffed bear that somebody had dumped. So they took that picture and branded it with their logo, and they took a little bear to ICSC, and it was the talk of the town. But the fact is that we are all Hemet, and we're all in this together. The success and failure of Hemet is on all of us collectively, the business community, the residents, all of us. So if we can continue to work on this, fine-tune it, so that you can bring back now a third balanced budget. Mr. City Attorney, if you can, and the city manager, work on maybe reducing some of those code costs with the option that Deputy City Manager has. That can be something that can be implemented in there, into that also. All right, so you have your direction. Thank you all for your comments. Right? Yeah, but we've got to go back. So they have their work cut out for them still. Thank you all for everybody who spoke. Thanks for your comments. And then now we're going to go back to the first item, which is item 2 for the public comment. So I'm going to open that up now. So if there's speakers for that public comment.
Sid Savage and Pat Savage are your speakers.
Okay, thanks.
I find it really interesting that you have no problem looking at Measure U money and using it otherwise, and somehow or other we can't use the water department's interest on their income to balance the budget. So however you guys think is however you guys think, okay? So that was just an aside. Okay, so I have got to commend City Council members Brown, Krupa, Wright, Meyer, and Percival, and the City Attorney, Eric Bale, for getting done in 8 days what you failed to do in 4 years. It took a citizen telling the City Council and attorneys and the attorney that the investment law policy requires updating every year for California state law. Yet, there is no citizen on the newly proposed Investment Oversight Committee. The new committee is the same old tired eyes that allowed 4 years to go by without lawful updates. How many errors do you think are in the thrown together document that you guys voted on today? I will say, Russ said there was at least 2. He missed the other 12. How many of you read it? Russ did. I don't know about any of the rest of you. I can tell Russ did. How many of the errors are serious? How many are grammatical? Does it even matter to the same old eyes that robo-stamp Hemet's $65 million of taxpayer money? The document states the new policy is designed and managed with a degree of professionalism that is worthy of the public trust. Yet, where is the annual forensic audit of our public money? The audit proposed in the document that you stamped is a simple rubber stamp of numbers presented. Can you add? Where is the real audit done every year to ensure $100 out of $65 million hasn't gone missing? Would you miss $10,000 out of $65 million? Would you miss $100,000 out of $65 million? You would like to think that you'd miss that, but without a real forensic audit, a real audit, no one knows for sure. This has gone on for 20 years. Measure U has already left, not all of you. Repeatedly said yesterday, don't trust City Council. I hear citizens say, don't trust City Council. Oh, really? I'm sorry. I apologize and take those words back because I was there, of course, and I thought that's what I heard. And I was about to say I see why. But, the 3 minutes are up? I believe I asked for 6. Sorry. Okay.
I don't have anybody who gave up their time to you.
I gave up my time. I had a misunderstanding that I could speak on budget.
And I apologize, it doesn't say here that he was giving his time to her. You're welcome to do
Would you like me to stop?
Go ahead. 3 more minutes.
Okay, the slapshod policy thrown together in 8 days. So I apologize, you guys, if you didn't say that about Hemet. I believe I heard that, but maybe not. Slapshod policy thrown together in 8 days without Hemet citizen participation is certainly not worthy of my trust. Further, it demonstrates what I thought I heard Measure U committee state. City council cannot be trusted. So we talked about the letters to the state attorney general and the appropriate representatives of California regarding today's outcome, including how you individually voted. You all passed unanimously the entire budget, the proposal. So I'm going to ask 3 things of the council. 1, I already asked you that you get together with us and talk about the CD of Hemet with none other than the president of the bank who can talk meaningfully about it. As we did today, he reached out to us, and I thank him for that. We asked City Council to direct the staff to review, perhaps, maybe understand the corrections to the proposed budget. We asked City Council to direct staff to incorporate citizen participation on the Investment Committee to at least as many members as oversee Measure U. After all, Measure U is $10 million with 7 citizens watching it. Taxpayer dollars exceed $65 million without a single taxpayer watching it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make one comment? Okay. The ad hoc committee for the investment policy got the information on changes back in April, and Carly and I have been working on it ever since with staff. So it's not that it was done in 8 days. We got the information in April.
Thanks. Any other comments? No more comments? Okay. So we will close that public hearing. Thank you for your comments. And future agenda items.
You know, it was a long-standing committee that we had years ago, Budget Committee, and I think we desperately needed to come back, a standing Budget Committee. I'd like to be on that committee, and Mayor, I hope that you would like to be on that committee too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
Council members, it's a special meeting. Can't add things to a special meeting. However, you can have a future agenda item, which is what I took it to be, and we'll put that on the next agenda.
Any other? We can't make it today, but at the next meeting we can. Yeah. Any other future agenda items? Okay. All right. With that, we will be adjourned to our next meeting on Tuesday, the 26th, 7 p.m.